How's it going, you guys? So I just woke up, I'm getting ready for work, and I wanted to make a quick video to address a common problem that happens to pretty much anybody and everybody, no matter your age, and especially depending on your activity level, and that's going to be lower back pain. So I'm sipping on my delicious yerba mate while I make this video. Amazing drink. Definitely look it up if you haven't already. So, lower back pain. So there's multiple causes. So first of all, if you're sitting all day, okay, if you're sitting all day, if that's your job, what's going to happen is you're going to sit with your knees flexed at the hip. So basically, your hip flexors are flexed all day, and your knees are in a 90 degrees position up in front of your stomach, right? You know the position when you sit in a chair. And what that does is it flexes the hip flexors all day passively, and it tightens the hips. And so you're going to have lower back pain due to the hip tightness. And so what you want to do is you want to do hip adductor stretches, okay? So that means the inner part of the hip. And so basically you're going to spread your legs out right in front of you. And you're going to spread them as wide as you can, and you're going to reach out in front of you, okay? And so it's a reaching adductor hip stretch, reaching in the middle in between your hips, and you're going to try to stretch for, 3 to 5 sets of, as long as you can really, but 45 to 120 seconds ideally. You want to sit in that position for as long as you can. Most people have extremely tight hips, especially the inner hips. And that definitely is a main contributor towards lower back pain, especially if you sit all the time. Now, in athletes, this is also common because we do a lot of hip hinging movements, which are essentially, again, bringing your knees in that flex position, 90 degrees, right in front of you. And so you're constantly flexing at the hip. And on top of that, so that, things like deadlifts, things like football huddles, pretty much anything where you're bending at the hip, where you're flexing at the hip. So your lower back is going to be tight. And so again, and your hips are going to be tight. So again, you're going to want to do hip adductor stretches. You're going to want to stretch in between, the same stretch as before. Now, pretty much everybody should be doing hip stretches in general, and just going through a thorough hip stretching routine, hip mobility routine. And of course, there's so many hip mobility routines on YouTube that you can go through as long as you're stretching your hip adductors, and then everything else after that, you're going to be fine. Now, I personally don't believe in the idea that, if you have lower back pain, it's because you have a weak back. I think most people, the tension's coming from a overly tightened muscle. And the goal should actually be to lengthen the tight muscle rather than to stretch whatever muscle might be in pain. I know a lot of people who constantly, they try to strengthen whatever muscle's causing them a problem. And, they do this for months and years, and they never end up fixing the problem. Because a lot of times, let's say your lower back is hurting, right? And you think you have a weak back. And then you go and you try to strengthen the back over and over again for years. Most of the time what happens is you start to strain that muscle, because that muscle was originally was tight. It was probably overused, and you may not know it, especially with all this information going around, people telling you, you can strengthen the muscle, blah, blah, blah. It's more important to gain mobility in whatever areas are causing you a problem, and that's a huge thing. So another thing is you want to start to do more planks and core stabilization exercises. And so strengthening the core as a whole should be ideal rather than targeting your glutes or your lower back or your psoas or something like that. And so things like planks, weighted planks, side planks, weighted side planks, is a very good option, a very good idea. I think a lot of overhead press and overhead squatting is also amazing at not only identifying areas of tightness and where you should focus your mobility on, because of course if you're tight in the hips, you're tight in the anywhere in the spine or in the lats or in the shoulders, you're not going to be able to do an overhead squat, and it's going to really show. And you can assess your mobility based on your performance in overhead squats and overhead movements, which can really give you a more realistic assessment of what needs to be done as far as mobility and strengthening is concerned. But not only that, but to hold a weight over your head requires a tremendous amount of core stability. And the strength of your core is going to directly translate into what type of pains you're going to experience. Now, other things that can be the cause of the lower back pain, and I'm talking muscular. I'm not talking about things like kidney problems and stuff like that. It could be the way that you sleep. If you sleep on your side, chances are you're sleeping all twisted up and everything. And it'd be a good idea to use pillows and towels and other things to put your hips in a more ideal position. Maybe work on sleeping on your back. And if you have sleep apnea, look into food triggers that might actually be you might have an intolerance to a certain food that can be causing the apnea, or if you're overweight, obviously that can cause sleep apnea. Another thing is chronic overuse. Again, like if you're deadlifting all the time, if you're doing back squats, if your form's not so good on some of these exercises, and obviously like if you're doing a sport like jiu-jitsu where you're constantly flexing your hips and you're bending over in these different positions and whatnot, you're gonna have to every single day, like multiple times a day, be stretching your hips. There's no way around it. Other things that could be causing it would be food intolerances. So if you eat nightshade vegetables, things like tomatoes, ashwagandha, goji berry, peppers, bell peppers, potatoes, just regular potatoes, not sweet potatoes and yams, but regular potatoes, and all forms of regular potatoes. Those are nightshade vegetables, and they can actually trigger inflammation in the joints and pain in the back. And so you might want to go on an elimination diet where you remove all nightshade vegetables for a while. And so just generally though, for most people, it's a lack of mobility in key areas, and it's a chronic overuse of certain patterns. Typically sitting and bending over on a regular basis can cause these types of imbalances that lead to hip tightness and lower back pain. And so obviously there's more to it all, but these are the basics and the most common issues that people face. So you could do foam rolling, you could do hot cold hydrotherapy, ice baths, hot baths, Epsom salt baths, foam rolling on the hips, the lower back area, the psoas muscle, the glutes, foam rolling all of that area, and going ahead and doing a vigorous hip mobility routine is going to do wonders. If you do this, every day, the more frequently, the merrier, as well as obviously deep squats and a good strength training routine that focuses mostly on form and mobility rather than intensity. So leave your question and comments down below, and I'll talk to you all next time.